Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show you a very beginner friendly technique using just a bit of wire, a couple of pliers, and a tool called a wig jig. So let's get started. To make this project, I'm using 16 gauge dead soft aluminum that's been anodized. There'll be links to all the different tools and materials down in the video description below. I get mine from Parawire. They have a wide variety of colors and gauges and shapes even to choose from, as well as a variety of different metal types also. I like the dead soft aluminum for this though because it hammers out really well. It has a very nice spread to it, but we'll get to that. So we're going to be using the Wig Jig, and here I'm using the plastic model. You could be using the metal, but I like the plastic because you can actually lay, kind of over and get an idea about where to place the pegs. And then also the pegs are secured in kind of by pressure, whereas the metal version has little rubber backs that can kind of be cumbersome. I'm using 6 of the smallest pegs, the thinnest pegs that they give us, and we're actually going to be working on the spool, so I'm not going to be cutting any off. And I'm going to start with the pliers that I'm using are round nose, bent nose, flush cutters, nylon jaw, and then I'm also, this is completely optional, using a jeweler's hammer with a brass and nylon head, as well as a 5-pound anvil. But again, those are completely optional. And I'm going to start with my round nose pliers and just grip as close to the tip of the wire as I can, but about a centimeter in from the tip of my pliers, making just a little loop like that. And then I'm going to place the loop over our first peg. What's really great about this, and I always recommend keeping the little manuals that come with your tools, because even though this seems very beginner, sometimes even after making jewelry professionally for over 10 years, it's really nice to come back and revisit the basics. And so we're going to just follow that around, and you can work with it flat on your work surface, but I actually like to pick mine up so that the wire can jump off. Excuse me. Sorry, it's allergy season. So bringing it around, I'm just going to fold over this way. And I actually like to bring the wire up a bit and then down. I feel like it gives me a cleaner bend. So bringing it around, dodging the other pegs, bringing it up nice and tight, and then bringing it around. I really, really love this tool for whenever I want to make pieces that match. So if I'm making a pair of earrings or a bracelet and want a bunch of like the same components, then I'm going to bring our end down nice and snug, but not too snug because I don't want it holding on to the pin so much that it pulls it out. And now we're going to lift this off of the pegboard, and you can see that's quite wide, and that could be what you're going for, but I want a much tighter design. So I'm going to come in with my flush cutters, and I'm snipping, making sure that the wire of the component is what's catching the flat end. That way it stays nice and flat. I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to adjust that out just a little bit because I don't want any overlap for whenever I start smooshing. And so now from here, I'm actually going to take my round nose pliers and insert into 2 of the loops, like that, and then just squeeze them together gently. And I'm trying to hold everything else relatively securely. And what that does is I feel like it pinches it down and gives us a really nice squiggle. I had done a tutorial in the past of a freehand squiggle, but I really do like the way that these come out using this jig tool. And so there we go. That's pretty different from how it was. And so now actually though, I'm going to add a little bit more modification. I want these loops a little bit more centered up. So I'm going to grab, and I'm being careful to not cinch down so hard on the pliers that on the wire that my pliers leave a mark. But you do want to be firm about it. And I'm just inching it around until it sits nice and centered up. You can hear the ice cream truck in the background. Always the ice cream truck. So there we are. You could have two little components that are mirror image of each other. Or you could have them strung along end to end with like a bead link in between, or maybe a bit of chainmail if you wanted to mix in different textures. So you could take these. I would recommend at least squishing it with some nylon gel pliers, if nothing else, because that will serve so much to either, depending on the terms you prefer, surface harden or work harden. But what it does is basically you're just hardening up the metal. The more you work with a soft metal, the more stiff and brittle it becomes. Now, I've never had to worry about metal becoming brittle from using my nylon gel pliers with it, but we're about to move on to hammering. So if you can get an idea, this piece has not been yet. We're about to move on to hammering, and you can actually really damage your wire with that. This has been no hardening, and you can see how that comes apart, whereas this one has been hardened up, and I have to pull much harder. And so, knowing that that's the case, let's squeeze it up some more. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Squeeze, squeeze. And there's nothing wrong with testing it and being like, oh, well, that's softer than I wanted it to be. There we go. So that's much harder. Now I can still put pressure on it and make it come apart, but, let's try to not do that. Now, if you are very active, like I'm very animated whenever I talk, so I like for my bracelets to not have to come up, like no risk of coming apart. You could come through and wire wrap a little join where each of the points connect. Or you can do as we're about to, and bring in our anvil and set this down. And I'm going to be using the nylon head. Now we're going to get a little bit of spread here. That's okay. We can take care of that. But see what I mean? How it distorts the pattern a little bit? But we can actually come in and try to bring that back down and in. Oops. Don't want them to overlap though. And so that it's just with the nylon head. But I'm going to try a little bit with the brass head as well. Just focusing on the edges. See how we get a little bit of spread there? Trying to dodge my fingertips. So now we can flip this over, and it really gives us a nice serpentine shaping. And we could hammer it to spread even more too if we want. And I'm having a much harder time distorting the metal back into its shape. So that's cool. But yeah. There we are. Now also, a further option is you could actually set this into something called a swage block. It looks like this. Has a bunch of little curves in it. That's a long version, and then I actually have a larger version here that has a much, like this is the biggest that we have. And I want to give this just a little bit of a curve for some earrings. And so what we would do is we would put it on the largest setting, and then we would use the handle that kind of corresponds for the dapping block And then I'm going to use a rawhide mallet, and I'm just going to whack it. Well, now it distorted a bit, but I think that'll be all right. And so you can see that gave it a really nice little curve. We can also use the head to give it more of a controlled spot hammer. There we are. And that gives us a really nice shaping. So with just a couple of tools and a lot of hammering, you can get some really cool different effects with stuff like this. Though honestly, I still think I like that one best. I love the round wire. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me during this video. I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And you can share pictures of what you make over on my social media. You can tag me on Instagram or post it to my Facebook wall. Links for all that stuff will be down in the video description below. We also have links to our Patreon, where if you enjoy my free tutorials and you would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in my fairy house giveaways, in our monthly craft crates, and our digital download content, behind the scenes, like all sorts of stuff, please consider becoming a patron. Pledges start at just $1 a month, and they do so much to help us keep everything going here. So, but yeah, and on that note, let's talk about some different ideas. These could be earrings, they could be, charms like how we talked about, either hanging or strung together with beads. You could have it hanging, necklace components. With this one, I'm really excited about the curving concepts because you could actually have it come around and be a bit of a finger ring, which I think would be really cool. You can also, I don't know, like, what are y'all's ideas? But it's just the possibilities are endless. They really are, and I'm excited to see what y'all come up with because you're a really creative bunch of people. I know y'all inspire me every day. So thanks again for hanging out with me, and until next video, happy crafting. Bye.